everyone. Welcome to the Paranormal Pride. I am your host, Denise Pridemore, and here's my sidekick, Ron. I know you guys all know him. And please ignore the paint and the tape in the room behind us. We will be getting this painted. It will not sit there for months on end without getting finished. He's already finished the bathroom.
That's a screen. That's just the back screen we got back here.
No, that's what they wish. So, but as you guys can see, it's going to be a lovely color of purple. So,
Susan and Mike.
My shirts will just blend in. You'll never even see. You'll just see my floating head in here soon. So, for those of you who are keeping up with Vincent and the incident that happened with him, he is awake, doing very well. He is. He knows who he is. He knows that he's been in an accident. And
hello, Mom.
I don't know. I don't know much else other than that. We hope to be seeing him this time or on Tuesday next week. We don't know if that's still going to happen, but that's the plan. And Timothy and his brain cancer, he's steady. He has another test coming up on Wednesday, and hopefully by the time we get there, they will have the results of that his tumors are getting smaller. So please keep both Vincent, or if you want to call Boomer, or call Vincent Boomer, that's his name. Keep both him and Timothy in your prayers. Pray that God continues to use his grace on them. So please and thank you. I appreciate it. And I'd like to say hi to everyone, Mike and Susan, Karen, Ron's mom, Tom McNicholas, Crystal, and Dave. So I'd like to thank you guys all for being here, and I hope you guys enjoy the show. I'd like to invite Christopher Balzano up onto the show. He is coming. We've had him before on the Paranormal Nation Radio, Not So Normal. So this is his first time on the Paranormal Pride. We're going to talk to him about his new book, plus all the other things that he's got going on. He's always busy. He's been busy with goes to a lot of the Florida libraries. So keep that in mind when we're talking to him. So, and you guys, he's got a lot of weird information, and you're going to love every second of it. So I'd like to welcome Chris to the show.
Hey, what's going on?
You got a lot of books.
Thank you. I'm texting my son. He's in the shower listening to heavy metal music really loud about 20 feet away. So I was just texting him like, turn it down, dude. So sorry about that. You caught me. How are we?
Depends on what kind of heavy metal it is. What is he listening to?
You know what? I don't know what it is, which means it's not good. So if I don't approve specifically of the heavy metal, then it's not worth it. So
yeah, we just don't want the trademark infringement or the copyright crap coming up.
Yeah, I just don't want to hear what he calls heavy metal. So, well,
you can beat him with a pipe. Maybe that'll count.
I like the way you think.
So you have a new book that
I do.
You're pre-selling, or is it already available and you're signing it and sending it out?
Well, I mean, I have tons of copies in advance. So I have been for the last week signing copies, sending them out to people. But it's officially out. It's called Haunted Southwest Florida, and it's officially out August 5th. But anyone who wants to get in contact with me, and it's funny because I bought all these pre-ordered copies of it, and then realized, which I'm a huge believer in, I had to give 20 away for people who helped me with the book, Right. And I think that's a crazy thing because I read some books out there for because I've been doing this for 30 years, right? And I read some books out there, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's my story. Names not mentioned, no credit given whatsoever. So I've always prided myself on. I always think in the paranormal field. And in the writing field, so the two things cross, you gain credibility by pushing out those people who helped you and how you got what you got, as opposed to it just didn't come from the ether. So I've been sending out a lot of free copies of the book this week.
Well, that's very nice of you, because I've read some stuff that has been plagiarized many times, and not from me. I mean, I have seen there is a couple authors that did plagiarize me. It wasn't in print. It was my research that they plagiarized.
Yeah. It's, I mean, it's happened since I started. I remember the first one. The first one I saw was in 2003. I just did an episode. I do a podcast called Tripping on Legends too, and I did a podcast about this great Massachusetts legend called the Red-Headed Hitchhiker Route 44. Yeah. And I was looking at how that name had changed over the years. And I was trying to track down where had it changed, because it used to be called the Red-Headed Phantom. And then it became known as the Red-Headed Hitchhiker. And so I was looking back into this year, 2003, when 3 different books all write about the legend really for the first time, right? And I revisited that someone had stolen basically all this work that I had done when I was still like 25 or whatever, like back in the day, and published all this stuff and really put it out there that the name was the Red-Headed Hitchhiker, because that's what I called it instead of the Red-Headed Phantom. And so back then it was like really offensive. And I remember I wrote her this nasty letter and I said all this stuff. And it was really like the first time that had happened. And she sent something back that was like, I've been on pain meds and I'm getting a divorce, like all this really weird stuff. And I was like, what do I care? I hadn't even published a book yet. So you literally stole stuff from me that I can't publish now, being an honorable person. But then just a few months ago, I was reading this book. I think it was Haunted Florida Roadside Attractions. And it took, so I immediately am going through and I realized like, oh, wow, this person just wrote this book from her armchair. Like she literally just like Googled all of these different places because none of the pictures were from it and stuff like that. But I got to the chapter about Silver Springs, which is this amazing place in Florida, right on the edge of the Ocala National Forest. So I had written about that in my Haunted Ocala book, in my Haunted Florida Love Stories book. And I looked at her chapter, and being a teacher and a high school teacher, so I could see how she just literally took the chapter of my book and ran it through ChatGPT and like published it as her own work. And I was like, wow, that's what we've evolved to. So it's no longer just ideas and research being stolen, but also the words. And it's kind of like, okay, well, what's going to be the next? As a folklorist who looks at how stories change and how ideas move and shape, it's going to be interesting to see how the copying of that type of thing is going to change actually like haunted folklore.
Well, I used some AI. I had to create something for a friend. And so I used some AI to take some of the information that I had and I ran it through there to word it out. And it came back with stuff that was not true about the location that I was writing about. And I mean, I'm sitting there fighting with the AI going, that's not true. This is what happened, And it's like, I could have typed it all faster at that point.
Yeah. I mean, and once again, as a teacher, I think that's, and as a person who has to get information out there, I can see it as a valuable tool. But, there's an aspect of the biggest aspect of what I do is storytelling, and so to take away the flow of the story and the connections that I make. Because one of the things I've always prided myself on is that I'm, back when I was an investigator, I wasn't just an investigator. Now that I'm a legend tripper and I have a different approach to it, like the idea is to connect these ideas and to find these details in the stories and in the communities that brings up something new. So we're all just not retelling the same stories or talking about the same places. So you start taking someone's voice as opposed to just like the facts of something. That's where I have the issue. And the way that I had lined up that story in Silver Springs, because it's this great haunted legend that's existed for over 100 years of these canoes, these ghostly canoes moving across the water. Now, Silver Springs was where they shot Creature from the Black Lagoon. It's where they shot the TV show Tarzan. If you're older like me, it's where they shot the water scenes for the movie Legend, Tom Cruise's movie, like back when he was 20 years old or whatever. So it's this absolutely beautiful place that for decades, for a century, has had this tradition of these glass bottom boats because the water is just so beautiful. And people have been reporting this ghostly canoe that travels in this one section, which is known as either the abyss or the bridal chamber, depending on the generation that's telling the story. And then these orbs that just kind of fly over the water, especially in the morning time. And so I had found that there were 5 different variations of this story, right? And over the years, they had changed the background or the backstory of where these ghostly lights and where this canoe had come from. And that was a lot of work, to actually track down the legends. I could have just reported, there's a ghost boat, there are orbs of light floating on the water. But it was the fact that there was a story, and the story is not only the story of the haunting, but the story of how what we needed from the haunting changed over the years.
Yeah.
And so the backstory changed. So you start taking that stuff away. That's my bread and butter. What else have I got? I don't have my good looks. So.
Well, I'll tell you, that's kind of like with the Sally House in Atchison, Kansas. When we were there, there was one story that they were pushing. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't the original story. Okay. Yeah. It wasn't the original. It was one that fit the bill to get people in there to check it out.
Yeah.
So when I went through, I was like, okay, then where did this story come from? So there was the story that they were pushing was a doctor that had lived in the house, and the little girl died from a botched appendectomy. Some neighbor kid, okay,
yeah,
brought to him in the middle of the night and made him look like an inept doctor. Okay, so that was the story that they were pushing. And what's strange is that a doctor did live in the house, in fact, multiples, but this is the story they stuck with. And I said, okay, then where did this story come from? That a doctor lived in the house, had an affair with his maid, they had a baby, a love child, and she died of pneumonia. Okay, where did this one come from? And they go, well, they took liberties on what is that show called? A Haunting.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so they took liberties on there. It's but that story had to come from somewhere. They just didn't make it up as they were going along.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, I have a book called Haunted Florida Love Stories. Mm-hmm. And so it's all ghost stories and ghostly legends throughout the state of Florida, right? From Robert the Doll in Key West all the way up to the Bellamy Bridge in the Panhandle. And what you just said for a backstory is repeated about 17 times in different hauntings. So what I always say is we love a good ghost story, right? And we want a good ghost story. We want it to make sense. We want it to be neat and compartmentalized. The other thing is that when something paranormal happens to you and that's not your world, right? Yeah. You try to rationalize and then you try to put it through any filter you can to understand it, but you have no understanding of it because it's something that is so irregular in the real world. When a community has that, they have to then try to fall back on something that makes sense. And these love stories make sense because they're told over and over again. So there's approximately 987 hauntings in the state of Florida that have the same theme as Romeo and Juliet. I teach freshman English. I know it well, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's not saying that the ghost doesn't exist or that the activity isn't going on. It's our understanding of it or our ability to be able to grasp it comes from stories that we know. And so there's really 10 ghost stories that are just repeated in different variations all around the world, right? And then if you want to make money off of it, if there's some kind of profitability going there, like you're doing tours and things like that, that's not a ghost, that's my daughter. All of a sudden you now have like a bigger need to have people click with the story. I think the botched surgery is a much better story.
Oh yeah, considering it's a doctor,
Yeah,
and that they didn't have enough chloroform to put her to sleep, and she woke up in the middle, and now she hates men and she attacks men. I mean, I'm sitting there going, this is all bullshit. And there was another story even, and
there was lots.
There was lots. There's at least 5.
Yeah.
And so when I went through and I found the facts weren't as fun. But I thought that the facts were better because they told me a story of the family who lived in the house, who they were and what they did and how they were members of society and all this other stuff. And there was nothing in this story that made me say that this house was horribly haunted. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's what everybody wants. They want it to be something spectacular so that it can be a horrible haunting. It can't be happy. It can't be the people who just love their house and was just there because they didn't want to leave. It can never be that.
Yeah, I'm with. It's funny because if you take like Gravity Hills and things like that.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
We're everywhere.
So like those are fun, right? Like so people go there and they can move and it feels like they're going up the hill, but they're not really up the hill. And that's kind of like, some of the stories in there become pretty amazing. But that's supposed to be like a fun way to touch the paranormal, right? And what always happens to every single Gravity Hill, at least here in the United States, every single Gravity Hill then becomes the backstory changes to something horrific. And in addition to that, you have this idea that like there are other hauntings around it. So they become these like touchstones for other hauntings that are all around it or something like that,
Yeah. One that I heard was the one in Texas about the school bus, San Antonio school bus. And it was like, no.
Yeah. So
it made me laugh. Okay. This is years and years ago before Ghost Adventures went there. We had heard about it. And I was like, that's not true. And this is, that can't happen. Physics exists no matter what. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and so
that
used to back in the day. That used to be my test. Okay, so I've never. I'm a firm non-believer in paranormal groups. Like I've never wanted to be part of a group, and I ended up writing a book probably like 15, 16, 17 years ago now called "Picture Yourself Ghost Hunting." Mm-hmm. And in the process of writing that book, I did a very big deep dive on paranormal groups and the function of a group. I'm not saying it's not good. I'm not saying you shouldn't work with people, nothing like that. The dynamics of a group are not for me. So I've always been an independent contractor. I've always been like, here's some place I want to look at. Before I started legend tripping with like regular people, I know these 5 people. I'm going to ask them to come out with me on this investigation back in my investigator days. Mm-hmm. And people used to, say, oh, will you investigate with us? Can we investigate? Oh, we should go do something sometime. And my gauge of whether or not I would work with them, I would be like, so what do you think about that accident on the railroad? And I wouldn't say anything more specific than that. And they would then go on to tell me about the kids getting hit by the bus, or the kids in the bus getting hit by a train, the little baby hands, the hands moving it, the baby powder on the bumper, all of that stuff. And it was, it was like they were all reading from the same script, only it was in their hometown, or it was in the town next to them. And I'd be like, oh, that's amazing. Oh, that's crazy. That's a real ghost story. Yeah, I'll talk to you later. And I would never work with them, was my point. Because especially if they were back in the day hailing like, we debunk everything. I hate the word debunk, but we debunk everything and we're skeptical and and then they would believe this story. Now I've spent a lot of years looking into this. The thing in Texas never happened. This never happened. The bus never got hit. So I think in the history of the United States, there's been one fatal accident. I think it was in Buffalo, where a bus of kids was hit by a train. Literally one time in the history of the United States where that happened. Yeah. And yet every single state has their version of this. And so it's one of those things where that's an amazing story, and it confirms everything we want a ghost story to have and a ghostly legend to have. It's got little children. It's got tragedy. It's got, surviving death and helping other people, which is why it's so appealing, right? Mm-hmm. Not to mention the fact that how many of us have been stopped at a railroad track or seen a railroad track or driven over one at night and gotten a little bit nervous about it, even though there's obviously no train coming. So it plays on our fear, but it also plays on this idea that like these kids who died, like their death has a purpose because now they're little angels helping people out. And that's adorable.
Yeah. There's a story out of Paintsville, Kentucky. Okay. There's a park there that has a memorial to children that had died in a bus accident. It was in February. It's the worst bus accident in American history. Okay. They're driving down the road and they hit a patch of ice and went into a river, and they drowned.
Yeah.
So the thing is this memorial is in Jenny Wiley State Park, not where the accident happened, but people try to say that these kids that died in this bus accident are by this memorial. And it's like, it went over the bridge 7 miles ago.
Yeah.
I doubt very much that these kids walk 7 miles to be.
Is there a reason why the things were in two different places? It's just the park is named in their honor? No,
the park is Jenny Wiley is just somebody that they named the park after. They put this in the park after the park existed.
Okay.
They just had to find a place to put it. They didn't want it on the side of the road by the bridge because of flooding and other things. So they put it in the
stopping.
Park.
Yeah. I guess
it's right across from a dock. There's a boat dock in the Jenny Wiley State Park where there's a big lake and stuff, and they just put it over there. So they did die from something from this river downstream where this is at. But it's just one of those things that made me go, when I was listening to people talk about it, I'm like, it's a really neat memorial, and I could see where there would be a haunting somewhere maybe, but not there.
No.
Yeah.
Those kids didn't even know that this place existed, when this all happened, most likely because they were little. And so I do have a problem with some of these legends, like the one you were just saying, Gravity Hill, Crybaby Bridge, or the parks where, there's somebody jumped off of a bridge or jumped off a rock or hung themselves because the person that they loved scorned them. And because there's one of those there's one in every single town, big city. Yeah, every big and it's ridiculous how people buy in to it like it's fact. But yet there's never any real names to go with this. If this really happened, wouldn't you be able to find something?
Sure, there are names. It's Mary, Elizabeth. It's the same five.
Yeah,
names,
Sally,
right?
Molly.
Martha.
Yeah.
So, so my thing is that I don't hate that. I love that. Mm-hmm. And I think that early on, before I was an investigator, when I was doing more of what I do now, back when I first started, in my mind, I always had the idea of the crossroads. And the crossroads are the intersection of a true haunting and the stories we make up about it. And I've always thought, even in my investigator days, which is probably why I didn't get along with a lot of people, was that we should embrace these ghostly legends and the backstories that have kind of been pushed out. Understand that they're probably not the real story, right? That's probably not, if this is a true haunting, which is a totally different idea, right? Totally different story or totally different, part of it. But embrace the the legend part of it, right? A haunting is the story of the dead, but a ghost story is the story of the living, because it's what we need to feel about it, or how we process it, or what has been passed down. And the changing in that says a lot about us. You know, so like I'm in a constant battle with real folklorists who generally, like academic folklorists, don't want to allow the ghost story as part of a folklore narrative. And my argument has always been, and this has changed slightly in the time that I've worked, my argument has always been, like, there's no better judge of a culture or a society, no more of a litmus test than the ghost stories that they make up. You know, it talks about where they came from and their belief systems that they have. It talks about like this whole, what they believe now about things. In the world of social media, it really kind of moves ridiculously fast, right? Like ghost stories change and evolve. And I was just talking to, I was at a library working. And, it's like, oh, hey, I've got a new book. They're like, oh, yeah, I remember you from this. Da, da, da. And so we started talking, and she said, well, do you have any teen programs? And I'm like, yeah, I have a whole program that talks about all of these digital legends and analog horror and, TikTok type things, and 4chan and like, spooky pasta, and how those things move folklore today, and how ghost stories here in Florida, which means I could probably go to any state in the United States, ghost stories here in Florida. I have literally over the last 10, 12 years watched the story change based on what is popular on social media. And how like an actual haunting and what you can do or what people are doing at the location. I'll give you a great example. Beatty Tower, which is on the campus of the University of Florida. And this, it's a 13 floor dormitory. It's got an elevator. Now, for years, the urban legend was that there had been a girl who had gone there who was from Gainesville. So she was from the area. And Gainesville back in the 1960s is very rural, it's the definition of a college town. And the very first time she tried drugs, she got on the dope, thought she could fly, went to the top of Beatty Tower and jumped off, right? Thinking she could fly. So it's not even suicide because she thought she could fly. She thought she was flying. And of course she dies. Now, not only did this never happen, right? It hasn't happened in the history of hallucinogenics that people think that they can fly and jump off tower. Like, it just doesn't happen, right? Never mind, there was never this death on the campus of the University of Florida. The next level of the urban legend is that this story, which has been going on since the 1960s, was so prevalent that the song American Girl by Tom Petty is about this, right?
That's funny because, I'm not a Tom Petty fan. And I live in Florida and I have a long story about that. We'll talk about that later.
No, I want to hear your story. So, and if you look at especially the second verse of that story, it seems to sound exactly like the story that I just told you, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the weird thing is this about that part of it. The weird thing is Tom Petty had heard that that's what people thought the song was about, and he dispelled it. But other members of the Heartbreakers. I was about to say the Blackhearts. I know that's not the Blackheart. The Heartbreakers. I know, right? They've said that it is. You know what I'm saying? Like over the years, different ones have spilled it out. So it's allowed itself to keep the mystique. Whether any of that ever happened, there's still the ghost of a girl who walks the hall of the 12th floor of Beatty Tower. She is often seen in the stairs or in the elevator. Sometimes it will literally the elevator will open up on the first floor and go to the 13th floor, and no buttons have been hit. No one, I mean, like, no, all of these things, she's been physically seen. People have seen her on the roof, just kind of like walking along the edge. They've seen her jump off. So this whole ghost story, which people have witnessed. So is it a true ghost story? Is it an urban legend? Is it a ghostly legend, right? It's all kind of playing out there. And that's its world. For 2 generations, that's been its world, right? Mm-hmm. In the last 6 years or so, because of the popularity of the digital legend, the elevator game. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the elevator game.
Yeah.
Now, the thing to do is to play the elevator game in the elevator in the Beatty Tower, right? And everything that I just said, and the girl, and the jumping off, and the acid, and the, she was, all of the, like, now the important thing to do is to understand that that is why the elevator game works at the University of Florida, because you have to do it and you have to perform it and you have to do it and it only really works in Beatty Tower because of this girl who took, who ended her life by jumping off of that part of the story didn't exist until like 6 years ago.
Right. Once it became something, somebody showed something on TV and said, here, look at this.
Right. And so now it's the big thing to do. And keep in mind, that's like one of like 13 things I could cite in Florida, just in Florida, where I have been documenting it so long that I've actually seen social media change what you do at the haunted location. We can call it a trigger. We can just call it it's what we do as legend trippers, but also impacted the backstory as well. Yeah. Which, as a folklorist and as a legend tripper, I love that. I love seeing these kinds of things happen.
Well, I saw the elevator game on Evil.
Yeah. So we, it was really funny because I caught on to the elevator game maybe like 2 years before the episode, right?
Right.
Because we had heard it during the lockdown when we couldn't go out and legend trip. We decided we were going to go and like do all of these different, like by me, I'm saying my daughter and I. So imagine like I'm doing this with like my 10-year-old daughter. We wanted to explore all of these digital legends that are gaining really big popularity that you could do in your house, right? Mm-hmm. So things like, everything from Ouija boards and Charlie and like, divining rods, like old school things, to things like Midnight Man, One Man Hide and Seek, Three Kings. And we discovered this website, which is amazing. If you love what we're talking about tonight, you got to go to this website, which is Ghosts in Your Machine. And then she has a book, and I'm trying to remember the name of the book. I actually always have it like at my events and stuff like that, and people always like buy it, and I have to rebuy it. But it's like it's like the I can't remember the name of it. But the name of the website is Ghosts in Your Machine, and she had talked about the elevator game, and when she talked about it, my daughter already knew what it was, and when I started talking to my kids now virtually, my students who would be 7th graders, they all knew it too already. And so I became obsessed with this elevator game idea because I am scared crapless of elevators. And so by the time when that Evil episode came on, I have my kids 50-50, right? And I didn't have my kids. And I'm watching the episode and I'm texting my daughter. I'm like, they're doing the elevator game on Evil. And it was like, it was so exciting because it was like, yeah, it's like, and then what happens is something like Evil takes it and they canonize it. So all of these little versions of the story that have been going on and that have been like, prevalent in society before then, once us old people catch on to it and like put it on an actual TV show, it cements it. And it's been kind of exciting to watch the new things kind of do that.
So my thing about Tom Petty is I've always thought he was a horrible singer. Okay. Just going to go there.
Is that the whole thing? You said it was a long...
No, but we were in Saucy's here in Milton.
No talent.
Yeah, no talent. Horrible. He would never make it
That
to American
voice.
Idol, but neither would Stevie Nicks, and I love her. But we were in Saucy's here getting ice cream. It's the old Tasty Freeze here in Milton. We're sitting there and we're waiting on our ice cream. And we started talking to my daughter about the
you got a shame on you.
The new Beatles song is coming out. And I was like, it's not new. I said, Beatles are crap. I hate them. They suck. And I said,
why are you bringing me on the show and then saying you hate the Beatles and you hate Tom Petty?
Okay, now listen. This is what's funny is I said to my daughter, I said, there's so many things, I'm very picky about music. And right after that, that song comes on with about the Beatles.
The new one.
And then here's the Rolling Stones. And I go, oh. I said, the only thing next that could happen is that they could play Tom Petty. And the next thing you know, Tom Petty comes on and I get my ice cream and I say, we're leaving.
Well, you made it happen.
It's like they were listening to me.
It did.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like it was either, the algorithm was following you or like a random number generator, you actually made the song come on.
Yeah. So, and it was American Girl.
It was, I'm gonna have to disagree with you. I love Tom Petty. I love that song. Like, there's nothing about that song that I don't like.
Well, the thing is, in Kansas City, they made such a big deal about Tom Petty. It was like he was from there. But then I found out 2 years ago that Tom Petty went to a school in Maryland with my cousin. And my cousin taught him how to play some chords on his guitar for a project that they did together.
That's crazy.
And Tom Petty's real name, I don't believe is Tom Petty, but I don't remember that part of the story. But my cousin builds guitars and electric banjos for stars. He built one for Carl Perkins. Things like that. So he knows his musicians. So I believe him. He's also related to Glenn Frey. So I'm not. He is. So
okay.
But yeah, I've always hated Tom Petty's music, and I don't know why.
You know what? Probably the first thing that I ever sang like in front of people was "Free Fallin'," other than singing an Anne Murray song when I was 6 at a talent show. But that's actually the song that I probably like least by him. But I think that the reason why the story persists is that someone can cite some little interview where he said something or he gave it a wink and a nod when he said it. Like Tom Petty, don't like Tom Petty, like the Beatles, don't like the Beatles. What was the last good musical legend that you heard? Like today, for some reason, I don't think what is it? No, it wasn't the anniversary of his death, but like, something came up today about my old friend R. Gary Patterson, who was he was a rock and roll historian. He's the person who dubbed the phrase the 27 Club, and he worked on VH1's controversy, and a lot of these ideas that we have about and these stories that we know, whether they be ghost stories, but especially like curse stories and things like that, were from R. Gary Patterson's research. Mm-hmm. And him and I used to talk about like seeing it coming. Unfortunately, he's gone about 10 years now, but like see it like on the horizon that, forget about whether you like music today or don't like music today. There's no mythology behind it. There's no ghost story. There's no, Sabrina, whatever her name is, selling her soul to the devil in the crossroads to be able to sing. You know what I'm saying? Like which was always in the background of a lot of this music, right? Or like, Kiss was, Knights and Satan's Service. And so there was a mystique about it. And like, whether it was true or not didn't matter because you were still talking about it, right? And it was part of it. And so I really miss it. And I think part of the reason why I still hold on to that, even though I found interviews where he said that it's 100%, he's literally talking about a highway. It's not the opposite way. It's like we miss that in music, and so it's a lot less fun.
Well, it's like we drive from here to north, and when you were going through parts of Alabama, we're on the same roads that Hank Williams drove.
Yeah.
You're driving through here, and that there are legends about him. I mean, there's so many songs about this man.
Yeah.
Not to mention the fact, and how young he was when he died. Is this like one of those crossroads stories that he made a deal with the devil to be famous, and his 10 years was up, and this is it?
I wish Gary was around. Gary would probably know.
But that's, but then you have people out there that would discount Ozzy Osbourne, and he didn't make a deal with the devil because he's still alive and kicking.
Or maybe that's the torture. Maybe that's the torture, is that like, I'm going to make you famous, but at 80 years old, you're going to be sitting in a big old chair instead of like rocking it out. Like, and I think that once we get rid of that, see, one of the issues that I've always had with the paranormal wave that happened in 2000, that started in 2004, is, it became, we've lost, which I think is a sad thing, we've lost the awe of the paranormal, right? Like, we've tried so hard, people have tried so hard to demystify it and to understand it and compartmentalize it and capture it. I remember someone coming to me and saying they needed my help, and they thought that they had a pukwudgie, if you know what a pukwudgie is. They thought they had a pukwudgie in their house, along with some other dark things.
So you must have been still up north at that time.
No, I had just moved down here. But
that sounds like something you hear up north more than down here.
Well, what it was that this was up north. It was by phone. Okay. I had just been on that TV show Paranormal State, and so I got a bust of pukwudgie calls after that, right? And so what she said was that all this stuff had been happening in her house, and so she had called in a group to investigate. And she said, they told me I had to go outside because their procedures say the homeowner can't be in the house. So it was like wintertime, and I had to go outside. So she's like, so I'm outside smoking cigarettes. And they were walking through an upper part of the house. And she's looking in the kitchen, and she's literally watching this shadow go through her kitchen with this pukwudgie next to it. Mm-hmm. And she's calling up to the investigators, and she's saying, like, there's something in the kitchen. Da, da, da. And they're like, we can't go down there right now. We're working on our grid. And that to me is always my best explanation of like, of that losing the awe kind of thing, of like, we're so, that group was so wanting to be precise. And I think part of it has to do with, we're crazy people. We're weirdos, Denise. Like, we're not normal, like what we do. And so to when all of a sudden it starts to become normal, right, and accepted, we feel as if we have to be beyond reproach to be understood and to be heard, right? Because we're talking about lunatic things. So if you can say lunatic things, but have it make sense and show a clear logical path, that it makes it more consumable for other people, right? And so
it's not normal. And that's what they got to keep in mind.
I got you. But I think that's what a lot of this came from. So this whole idea of like, you have to approach with skepticism, or you have to work on debunking everything. I hate that word. Or you have to come from the approach that it's not real, and more importantly, the concept that it can be captured and trapped and understood, and has always rubbed me the wrong way, because we've lost, or a lot of people have lost their awe for the paranormal, and I think that that's a huge part of our initial draw to it. And for me, it says a lot about us as people and a lot about, there's plenty of room to debate things, but like, you should not be arguing about what an EVP says. Your eyes should be this big that there are voices on tape. So does it matter that they say, get the dog or get the log? As much as it is like, that's a dead dude talking. Like, like that is the thing that, and I think it's moving back a little bit more. You know what I'm saying? I think it's moved back a little bit.
Yeah. I believe that stuff happens it happens for a reason for certain people to see. But an example, when I was on Ghost Adventures, Ron's outside the Sally house. I'm standing on the front porch, and somebody has a cow about traffic. I'm not going to say who, but somebody had a cow about traffic. And while he was complaining at the crew for not shutting off the road, all the lights in the house went off and came back on. Ron asked the people, did you guys get that? You guys have cameras on the house? Because nobody was in the house.
Yeah.
So how did the lights go off? Because we knew where everybody was. We could see them all. And when I got in the house, of course, there was nobody in there. But I didn't know about it because I was paying attention to my cue to say something, waiting for them to come back. And I, of course, I'm going to be on TV. I'm nervous.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So him and my daughter saw this, and he tells them, and they go, no, we don't have cameras on the house. And it's like, okay, well, then you guys missed a perfect piece of information. So,
I think that's the, first of all, if you watch the shows, and you don't understand that kind of thing happens, then like, that's kind of on you, the viewer. And I think that, one of the things that people have difficulty with is, I'm going to use the word compartmentalize again, that there's a difference between being an investigator and being a folklorist or legend tripper and being a writer. You know what I'm saying? Like, and all of these different things, they're okay if you're approaching them with good intent. They're okay, right? Like, so if you are relying on the TV shows, like that's their job, is to be sensational. That's their so. Yeah, so I mean, I see that the whole thing about so much faked evidence, like, like their reputation is on how many people they can get, and that's perfectly fine because that's what we want from our television shows. Yeah. It's our misunderstanding of that. So, sometimes people will say, "Oh, you made that up to sell a book." Or something like that. And I'm like, well, except for the fact that a book is not my intent when I'm doing what I do. The book is the aftermath of that, And so like, I'm not faking something. Well, probably one of the weirdest things is people can search this later, whatever, but there's a video I have called When Puckwudgies Attack, which was supposed to be a funny little play on, because at the time I made it, that TV show was on, like When Animals Attack or When Nature Attacks or something like that. And so I called it When Puckwudgies Attack. And it's a video, it's probably like a very like 2-minute video of us at a site in Massachusetts in the Bridgewater Triangle where puckwudgies have been spotted. And one of the women's, who's a medium, is like, her body at this location, the Assonet Ledge, is taken over. And she starts flipping out and throwing all this stuff and whatever. Well, I shot that, or I was, my friend shot that for me as part of me showing how different investigators investigate, right? So it was to show, because it was a how-to video in a how-to book. And so it was supposed to be like, okay, here's one group, here's how they do it. Here's another group, here's how they do it. But it was so crazy and ridiculous and intense to me that I made a commercial out of it to sell the book, right? And so the number of people who have claimed that this evidence is faked or and the weird screaming and lights that you see in it, and I'm like, okay, we can agree to disagree whether this woman gets possessed by anything or whether she's just dramatic. That's open to interpretation. we can argue about what possibly is taking her over, or can, whether it's a puckwudgie or something else. We can debate that. Everything is real that you're seeing, right? Everything that's in that video exists, but it was pushed out there because it was so ridiculous and sensational because it was a commercial for the book.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So take it out of context. And so, it's like at that moment, I'm not an investigator. At that moment, I'm not a person who is looking for the truth of things. I'm a person who's trying to sell a book while still maintaining integrity and not putting out like lies.
So, what is a puckwudgie?
What's a puckwudgie?
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Yeah.
It is a troll type creature, like a 3 foot tall troll type creature, who is like, an elemental of the woods. You know what I'm saying? Or even though I've gotten some flack for saying it this way, it's like a demon of the woods. And they are all throughout Wampanoag folklore. And they were kind of hidden for a really long time. Like the Wampanoags talked about it amongst themselves, but it wasn't really pushed out there. Like it was kind of like this unknown, I use demon, elemental kind of interchangeably. It's not a cryptid. It's not a ghost. It's kind of like in this weird, more in like the fairy realm type of thing. But it is, when I was writing my first book, really, my first released book called Dark Woods, which was about this one town called Freetown in Massachusetts. As I'm researching and putting kind of some of the stuff I'm finding on the internet, people started contacting me, telling me that they would be in the woods and they would see these 3 foot tall creatures who were like hairy. They kind of had like a human look to them, but they looked like a troll, right? And they would just be like, whoop, like they would catch each other, and then something would happen, and they'd look back, and the troll and the thing wasn't there. And all of them, the first initial 4 that contacted me, all of them, which contacted me like within a month, that they all did, said that the creature then returned a few days later to, in 3 instances, it was their house. In 1 instance, it was like a garage, like a parking lot when someone was waiting for work. They returned as kind of like this warning to not go back into the woods. So one woman woke up and the puckwudgie's at the foot of her bed. Another one, again, it was nighttime. The puckwudgie was hovering outside, very Salem's Lot, hovering outside the window, just kind of staring her down. Another one, it was in the rearview mirror of this parked car. And all of them almost word for word said the same thing, which was, I got the feeling that it was saying, you may know where you saw me, but I definitely know where you live. Stay out of the woods. And so I had and they're looking to me for an answer. Like, what is this? Like, you're supposed to be the expert on this stuff in this area. And so I just happened to fall upon, in a random sentence in a book, this word puckwudgie. And I was a librarian at the time, or I worked for a library at the time. So I started doing research, and I discovered this somewhat obscure Wampanoag legend about these little people who were like trickster spirits of the woods who would go through these bursts of being like malicious and like kidnapping people and burning villages and like leading people out to their death and all this crazy stuff. And it was like, this makes total sense as to what people are talking about. And the physical description was like dead on. Mm-hmm. And when I showed them pictures that I had found and oddly enough in a kid's book, because there was no information about it on the internet at all. I'm like, is this kind of what you saw? Like all of them kind of had that moment of like,
oh shit.
Yeah, like that's really close to what I saw. Yeah. So I've been doing like the research of that for like 20 years now, and exploring that. And it's now puckwudgies are so popular, they're part of like Harry Potter.
Oh yeah.
But back then it was like, no one knew about him. It was just like this weird story that was happening in real time to people who were looking to me for answers.
That's just odd. And so you said earlier that you were on Paranormal State. That was one of the very first paranormal TV shows out there that was on mainstream.
Yeah. I mean, it was Ghost Hunters. I don't know if that predates Ghost Adventures.
Yeah.
Actually, both. I know Paranormal State was on before both of them.
I think Ghost Hunters was first though, because Ghost Hunters was 2004.
Yeah, I think they were before, just a little bit.
Yeah.
I remember watching them.
They've been around a while.
Yeah, they've changed a lot. Like you were talking about a haunting. I used to love that show.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because in looking at and watching that, so I do a tour, like a haunted history tour through downtown Fort Myers, Florida, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm doing like the introduction to myself, I always say, like, I grew up loving a good ghost story and loving that part in the ghost story where there's that like one little detail, like they're walking through the woods in the backyard and they find a headstone and says Mary on it. And the little kid's been playing with a little girl named Mary. And you go, it's real. Like, I love, like, that's what got it for me when I was a kid. I don't remember ever reading a ghost story and being scared that when it was like, he got a blip on his FLIR camera. Like, so, so I don't discredit investigators and even investigation shows, but it's like, that's not how I like to consume my paranormal. That's not how I like to watch my paranormal. Like, give me something that knows that it's a reenactment over something that they're trying to go out there and catch things. Just because if I'm telling you my story and I'm telling you versions of the story or different people are giving their take on what happened, then I'm trying to like go through the process of understanding. And I'm going through a process of refining my story so that it makes sense to you and that maybe you get it, right? Which is why we change and we tell those little white lies sometimes, which become, the offshoots of legends. I don't find anything interesting about watching other people go and try to look for ghosts. And so, like, I remember Art Bell used to have this group that did EVPs on. And I really liked that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really liked because they had been on the show in 6 months and they gave you like the 20 EVPs that they had gotten over those last 6 months that really, really stood out, what we would call a class A EVP, right? As opposed to like, really stretching it because there's a pressure to produce evidence to say something happened. And so it's really like, a few weeks ago, I had on a tour this girl. She had to be like 22, 23, if that. And she was really kind of like, I wanted to boot her off the tour, except for the fact her group, there was like 7 of them. So it was like, I really couldn't, because her and her girlfriend were like laughing the whole time. Mm-hmm. And I finally, like, we got to a part and I was like, hey, let me ask you, like, you don't believe in this stuff, right? And she was like, no, I'm an atheist. And I'm like, well, I'm not sure if atheism and this go hand in hand. But what she was saying was that she's like, you're showing us like a picture that someone took. Your mind will make up any kind of story. And then I was like, I love the way that you're approaching it. Can we stop criticizing everything and just maybe sit back and enjoy it as a good ghost story? And more importantly, a really cool lesson in the history of the town. And I was able to get her to like stop being as big of a jerk as she was being. But it's still at the end, I was like, so how did you enjoy it? She was like, it was a really good history lesson. I'm like, well, there you go. Take that away then. But it's that idea of like, yeah, our mind can make up things or see things that aren't there, or like, especially when we're told about it.
Yes. And that's the part that always gets me is, I'll tell people, they'll tell me about some place. And I said, there are stories that it may be haunted. And they go, well, can you tell us about them? And I said, no, I can tell you the stories. I said, but if I tell you about it, then it's not new to you when you go.
Yeah.
You need to experience it on your own and find out what you can find out. Every place we go, even if I've heard that it's haunted, I don't put any stock in it until I get there, until I witness something. We just went on a history walk in part of Milton. Okay.
No, I'm sorry. Where is Milton?
It's okay. So
Straight
you remember
north of Navarre.
Yeah, straight north of Navarre. You wanted to come up here to go to the Coon Hill Cemetery.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
Okay.
you're Panhandle. Okay.
Yeah. So
I find it adorable. You just didn't say we're in the Panhandle. Well, like that would have been easy.
We're panhandlers.
Think about this. Yeah, we are part of Panhandle Paranormal.
Like someone says here, I'm from Southwest Florida, or I'm on the East Coast, or Central Florida. You guys are like,
Right.
well, you know this other little town that I got you.
Yeah,
Wait, have you
we
been
just
to Coon
moved
Hill?
here. Yeah, so we just moved here 3 years ago almost.
I got you.
So
wait, have you been to Coon Hill?
No, not yet.
No.
Because right now it's snake season.
Did you say snake? Okay.
I don't do snakes.
No.
It's always snake season.
I was gonna say, dude, I live near the Everglades. Like snakes are no problem.
Yeah, I was gonna say this.
We still want to go.
Your new book, Haunted Southwest Florida. Was that Everglades tour or
Everglades.
story?
So basically, and I got into this a lot in the beginning of the book, like in the introduction, but what is Southwest Florida? Because the definition changes to what people need. So my basic idea was, I was like 75 from Tampa to Naples, right? So from Tampa to the Everglades. And then it was like, yeah, but you know what? Like people, so here's 75. Then there's 17.
Yeah.
And if you've never heard of 17, it is the paranormal backbone of this state, right? It is like one long, lonely road. And you could get off at any point on 17 and be like, hey, is there a ghost around here? And like 5 people will give you some barbecue, some boiled peanuts, and like tell you a ghost story. So it was like, I felt like I had to include that. And then one of the stories that really has like plagued me and I wanted to get it right. And it was like the first legend trip that I wanted to do when I got down here, because it was in one of my books before I even got down here, was a legend that takes place in Holiday, Florida. Mm-hmm. So that's like Tarpon Springs, which is a little bit beyond that. You know what I'm saying?
We know where it is. We stopped in Tarpon Springs when we were coming back from Tampa.
Did you get good Greek food?
No, we didn't. We were walking around in a park.
I gotcha. Yeah.
We had to go check out a park.
I gotcha. Did you go to Rose Cemetery?
No, we didn't know where we were at. To be honest, it was our first time in Tampa. We went on a cruise and we were coming back.
I gotcha.
And so we did a bunch of little stops, and basically, I was looking for rocks.
Yeah.
All right.
I like rocks, and so we were looking for that. And if we found something else, it'd be great. But we didn't find any rocks. What we found was mud. But it is what it is. But
I think you just defined the story of Florida, though. You come looking for something you want, and you find mud.
Not here. Here we find sand.
I gotcha. So in terms of like what the places that are included. So part of the driving force of like the very early on in the book, because I really just wanted to do it because I knew, I know all these stories here, and I had 2 different co-hosts of the show over the years be like, why are you not just doing a book about this area? Like about, and I'm like, well, because I'm so much more interested in the Ocala, drove me for this reason. And it was really like theme based for me. And a lot of what I wanted to do was based on Hernando de Soto.
Yeah.
And he is a Spaniard who came here with the goal and the directive to conquer Florida. And he ravaged the West Coast. He's supposed to be the first European to see the Mississippi River. Died on the Mississippi River. Is supposedly buried. Was sent out, buried there. And at one point, in this town of Live Oak, which is kind of near Tallahassee. He does all this really horrible stuff, and he forces all these Timucua, who are the tribe from there, to surrender. And he, under the truce of okay, just surrender and everything will be okay. And then he executes them all these leaders. And the last one puts a curse on it, right? And so I was kind of driven in this Haunted Southwest Florida book. I was driven by this idea of following that DeSoto curse, because there are so many things in Florida with his name on it that are extremely haunted. And then I started researching more of the history and discovering just how much of the land south of Orlando used to be called DeSoto County. Like pretty much like the entire state used to be DeSoto County. So in addition to the current DeSoto County, you have like what used to be DeSoto County. Then you have all these things that are named after DeSoto. Then you have Hernando County, which factors into it. And so like once I got the ball rolling with that kind of idea, figuring out which stories to include was kind of like, this feels like it's a Southwest Florida. So even though it takes place a little bit inland, it's a little Okeechobee-ish, I think it actually fits in because of this theme. So I take some liberties.
Well, so does everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, if you're really if people are overly concerned because they don't think Avon Park or Sebring are part of Southwest Florida, I'll take that that flack for that. So I won't take a flask, but I'll take the flack.
Yeah, we have a friend who lives in Sebring, and she hasn't said anything about any hauntings there.
Yeah, there. It's first of all, the whole town is haunted of Sebring. Okay. It's like, if you ask me, there's a part of me, because of the way that it was constructed as like a spiral. Mm-hmm. Because it developed this way, and then the guy who developed it just started developing things around another layer and then another layer. There's a part of me that like sometimes talks conspiracy theory, like that he was some kind of Illuminati person who specifically designed it, because it's very much like, if you look at an aerial map of Boston, that's where I'm from, if you look at an aerial map of Boston, there's no rhyme or reason to it whatsoever. Sebring was created in a very organized and like stylistic way that I feel like there's got to be another like Da Vinci Code, but Sebring style. So what that breeds is a lot of people talk about, and it's a people don't realize that a town like that far inland was a resort town, right? Like it really kind of grew because we're living far away from it, far away from those times. It grew as this idea that Florida was the place to go to cure all your illnesses. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like that the heat and the springs and and you could go there. I mean, Fort Myers became popular because people thought like if you had tuberculosis, you could just go to the Caloosahatchee and it would heal you. Like this idea that there was something mystical and magical about Florida drove a lot of those cities, a lot of those towns to boom. So Sebring is entirely based on the idea that like there's something magical in the water and the trees, and like come down here and you will be healed forever. And so many of those towns, they crashed so hard, especially when railroads went away and things like that, that we are now generations removed from these haunted stories that people used to tell. But there are so many abandoned buildings in that area. And if you ask the people who have been there for generations, they'll tell you the stories.
Well, it has been very enlightening having you on tonight. And I'd like to thank you so much for coming on. And I did share all your links in when I did the show. I shared a bunch of your links.
Thank you.
Where can everybody find you?
Wow, that was creepy. I don't want them to find. I know you made it sound like hiding out. So my main website is trippingonlegends.com. That's the name of the show. So you should totally listen to the show. And all the social medias. Facebook is Tripping on Legends. Spooky Tripping for the Instagram. And in terms of the books, if you live in Southwest Florida, they are coming to a Cracker Barrel near you anytime now. But you can find them all on Amazon, or if you're looking for like a signed copy, like a personalized one at a discount, you can just contact me via any of those social medias, and I'll get one to you as soon as possible.
And do you have any tours coming up soon? Are they every week?
I do the haunted history tour twice a week. And
really
it's really exciting because it began as like a standard tour, but the paranormal insight that I've brought to it has really made some strange things happen in the last 6 months. And so the tour is actually evolving. And like even today I was looking at like an ongoing story involving an alleyway. And like one person on the tour got a picture of something staring down at us from the ceiling. And it was like, it's an ongoing story because the city itself is constantly changing. So it's a really cool tour if you're in like, Lee County or Charlotte County or Collier. So,
well, we see Lee County all the time on Patrol Live.
On Patrol, I was going to say, it's not nearly cool enough for you to travel any further than like 2 counties to come downtown Fort Myers. But like, if you're in that area, it's pretty gosh darn good.
Well, it's on our list of places to go. Like we went out to Honeymoon Beach.
Yep.
Honeymoon Island.
Did you see the bride walking on the water?
No, but we went out there in February, right after they reopened the beach.
Yeah.
They just opened it up that weekend, and it was right after we got back from our cruise, and it was beautiful, but the storm had brought up so many rocks. And the thing is I did not realize that all the big rocks were the ones I should have been taking, not the little ones.
Yeah.
Because they were all geodes and I had no clue. So
it's crazy.
Myself.
I was just going. So I'm in Lee County. I just was going to visit because I like to write in libraries. I was going to visit the library in Pine Island, which is part of the town that I live in, right? Mm-hmm. Which was totally devastated by Ian. And it was crazy to think we're going on 3 years? No, 6 years? Was it 2019? No, 2000, whatever it was. We're going on years since Ian, like 3 years, and the buildings there are still devastated. And like 3 years, thank you. And the you were saying this, the rocks and stuff like that are still like up on the shore and stuff like that. It was crazy.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't take. So I want to go to Caladrasi, and I did not know that Dunedin. I thought it was Dunedin.
Yeah.
So I was clearly.
You talking about Dunellen? You talking about Dunellen? You talking about Dunellen?
No, Dunedin.
The other one. I got you. Yep.
Yeah, it's right there where Honeymoon Island is. It's right before. And I called it Dunedin. That's what I called it. I called it Dunedin.
Dunedin.
So his cousin lives right there in Clearwater.
Yeah.
Over in Palm Harbor. So they made sure that I learned how to say it so I didn't sound like an idiot.
That's, trust me, like I can barely say like the names from Massachusetts that I've known all my life. So when I came down here and like my going joke was talking about Sebring. My going joke was like the next town over is called Lorida, Florida. And it took years for me to run into someone because it's kind of a ghost town who went, it's pronounced Loretta. And I'm like, that's not nearly as funny as Lorida, Florida. So like, I'm not going to change that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So I get it. But I'd like to thank you so much for coming on, and I'd like to thank everybody for listening, and welcome you guys to come listen to tomorrow night when Carl, Ron, and I interview some people from a Texas paranormal team. It'll be fun. I forgot his name, but you know what? You guys will remember it after tomorrow, I promise. So you can listen to us here each and every Monday night at 7 p.m. Central on the Paranormal Pride Facebook and YouTubes, on the Bill of Rights Network Facebook page, and on Born TV, on Rumble, on Things Network, and Temple of Phoenix Rising Entertainment. You can also catch us in replay on Dark Realm TV, on Roku and Fire Stick, and soon to be on Apple TV. So thank you guys and have a great night, and see you tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Central for Paranormal Nation Radio, Not So Normal, and have a great night. Thank you all.